In 1979, two Vietnamese refugees arrived in Canada with almost nothing. Bich Ha and Huai Han Pan had fled their country during the final collapse of Saigon, carrying only what they could hold and the conviction that their children would inherit opportunities they themselves had never known. They settled in Markham, Ontario, a quiet suburb north of Toronto, where tree-lined streets suggested safety and the promise of an ordinary life. Both found work at Magna International, an automotive parts manufacturer in Scarborough. Huai Han operated machinery on the factory floor. Bich Ha worked the production line. They took long shifts and saved what they could. By the time their daughter Jennifer was born on June 17, 1986, the Pans had begun to build something resembling the life they had imagined. A few years later, their son Felix arrived. The family remained modest despite steady employment, choosing frugality over comfort, directing their resources toward their children's futures rather than their own present. The house they eventually purchased in Unionville was larger than necessary. The cars they drove were bought used. Their combined savings and insurance policies totaled approximately $200,000. These were not wealthy people, but they had secured a foothold in a country that had once seemed impossibly distant. Jennifer's childhood unfolded under the weight of expectations that were never explicitly negotiated but always understood. At age 4, she began piano lessons. Her hands were still small, her attention span limited, but her parents believed that discipline applied early would yield results later. She practiced daily under supervision, her progress monitored, and her mistakes corrected with a precision that left little room for deviation. By elementary school, she had accumulated a modest collection of trophies and certificates from local music competitions. The awards were displayed in the living room, visible to anyone who entered the house. They served as proof that effort, when properly directed, produced measurable outcomes. Figure skating followed soon after. Jennifer trained most evenings after school, sometimes not returning home until 10 o'clock at night. The schedule was relentless. She would arrive home, eat quickly, complete her homework assignments, and go to bed shortly before midnight. Sleep was brief. The next day began early. Her father believed that Olympic-level achievement was possible if the commitment was total, and for several years, Jennifer appeared to be progressing toward that goal. She trained with increasing intensity, her body adapting to the demands placed upon it. Coaches spoke optimistically about her potential. Then, during a routine practice session, she injured her knee badly enough to end any realistic prospect of competitive skating. She was 14 years old. The dream her father had constructed for her collapsed in a single moment, and no alternate dream was offered to replace it. At Mary Ward Catholic Secondary School, Jennifer played flute in the school band. Her grades were acceptable, hovering in the 70% range, which would have satisfied most parents but fell short of what Huai Han considered necessary. He expected marks in the 90s. He expected excellence as a baseline, not an aspiration. Jennifer understood that her performance was being measured against a standard she could not meet, so she began altering the evidence. She forged her report cards using templates she found online, adjusting her grades upward to reflect the achievements her parents believed she was capable of producing. The deception worked. Her parents praised her for results that did not exist, and Jennifer learned that reality could be manipulated if the documentation was convincing enough. She was not permitted to attend school dances. She was not permitted to attend parties. Her parents drove her to school each morning and collected her at the end of the day, eliminating any possibility of unsupervised time. They monitored her friendships and discouraged relationships that seemed likely to distract her from academic pursuits. Dating was forbidden entirely. Huai Han's position on this was absolute. His daughter's value would be determined by her accomplishments, not by her social connections, and any time spent on romance was time stolen from more important work. Jennifer complied outwardly while concealing the extent of her resentment. She described her home life in private messages as living under house arrest. She told friends that her father had hired private investigators to follow her, though this was not true. The claim reflected how surveillance felt to her, even when it was merely parental attention applied, without flexibility or trust. In grade 11, she began dating Daniel Wong. He was a senior, 2 years older, and his presence in her life represented the first significant decision she had made independently of her parents' approval. They met at school and developed a relationship that was conducted almost entirely in secret. She did not tell her parents about him. She did not bring him to the house. When they spent time together, it was during brief windows of opportunity when her movements were not being monitored. The relationship continued for several months until police found marijuana in Daniel's car during a routine traffic stop. He was forced to transfer to a different school. The separation should have ended the relationship, but Jennifer was unwilling to let go of the one part of her life that belonged to her alone. They remained in contact. By her final year of high school, Jennifer had received early acceptance to Ryerson University in Toronto. The offer was conditional on her completing her remaining credits, including calculus. She failed the course. The university rescinded its acceptance. She did not tell her parents. Instead, she announced that she would be attending Ryerson in the fall, then transferring to the University of Toronto's pharmacology program after 2 years. Her father was pleased. He purchased a laptop for her. She collected used textbooks in biology and physics, filled notebooks with information copied from online sources, and pretended to attend classes. In reality, she spent her days in public libraries and coffee shops, researching topics she believed would sound plausible if her parents asked questions. She worked part-time shifts as a server and later at a restaurant where Daniel had found employment as a kitchen manager. She taught piano to children in the neighborhood. Her parents believed she was attending university. Her friends believed she was attending university. The lie was comprehensive and required constant maintenance. For years, she sustained the fiction. She claimed to have won scholarships. She forged documents confirming her enrollment in the pharmacology program at the University of Toronto. She invented stories about volunteering at the hospital for sick children, describing shifts and patients and experiences that never occurred. When her supposed graduation date approached, she told her parents that the university only provided 1 ticket per student and that she had given hers to a friend to avoid excluding either parent. There was no graduation because there was no degree. She had never attended a single class at any university. The entire structure of her adult life was a performance, and the audience was her family. The performance ended when Bitch Ha Pan began to notice inconsistencies. Jennifer claimed to be volunteering at a hospital, but had no identification badge and no uniform. When questioned, she offered explanations that did not hold together under scrutiny. Bitch Ha decided to follow her daughter one morning. She watched as Jennifer walked past the hospital entrance and continued down the street. She watched as her daughter entered a coffee shop and sat down with a book. Bitch Ha returned home and told her husband what she had seen. Hui Han's response was immediate and unambiguous. He wanted Jennifer removed from the house. He wanted her gone that day. Bitch Ha intervened, convincing him to allow their daughter to remain under the condition that she complete high school properly and apply to university with honesty this time. Jennifer agreed. She had no other option. The terms of her continued presence in the house were non-negotiable. She was required to sever all contact with Daniel Wong. Her father's reasoning was explicit. If she wanted to remain part of the family, Daniel could not be part of her life. The choice was binary. Jennifer chose her parents, or appeared to. In reality, she purchased a second phone and removed the SIM card whenever she was not using it, ensuring that if her parents discovered the device, it would appear to be broken rather than functional. She contacted Daniel in secret, coordinating calls during the brief periods when her movements were not being tracked. For a time, this arrangement held. Her parents confiscated her primary phone and laptop for 2 weeks. After that, she was permitted to use them only in their presence, and they conducted random inspections of her messages. They restricted her employment to piano teaching and began tracking the odometer on the car to verify that she was traveling only to approved locations. Her curfew was reinstated. Her mother accompanied her nearly everywhere. Bitch Ha softened the enforcement slightly by occasionally allowing Jennifer to use her phone when Hui Han was not watching. A small gesture of sympathy that did nothing to alter the broader structure of control. Jennifer enrolled in a calculus course to earn the final credit she needed to graduate from high school. She was 24 years old. Most people her age were finishing university or beginning careers. She was still trying to complete the requirements for a diploma she should have received 6 years earlier. Daniel Wong grew weary of the arrangement. He was tired of the secrecy, tired of the restrictions, tired of a relationship that could only exist in fragments stolen from a schedule that was not Jennifer's to control. In early 2009, he broke off the relationship. Jennifer was devastated, but there was no one she could tell. Her parents believed she had complied with their demand to cut contact, and her friends had grown accustomed to her disappearances and the explanations she offered for her increasingly limited availability. She was alone in a way that was both literal and structural, trapped inside a life that had been designed by people who believed they were acting in her best interest. In February of 2009, she posted a message on her Facebook page. It read, "Living in my house is like living under house arrest." She also posted, "No one person knows everything about me, and no two people put together knows everything about me. I like being a mystery." These were not the reflections of someone who had accepted her circumstances. They were the words of someone documenting the conditions of her confinement for an audience that would only understand their significance later. By the spring of 2010, Jennifer and Daniel had resumed contact. The details of how they reconnected are unclear, but phone records later entered into evidence confirmed that they were speaking regularly by mid-year. At some point during this period, Jennifer began exploring a possibility that had not previously occurred to her. If her parents were not alive, she would inherit money. If she inherited money, she could live independently. If she could live independently, she could be with Daniel without restriction. The logic was simple once the central obstacle was removed, and the obstacle was her parents. She approached two acquaintances separately during the summer of 2010. The first was Andrew Montemayor, a high school friend. She asked if he knew anyone willing to help with something serious. He introduced her to Ricardo Duncan, someone he described as capable. Jennifer met Duncan at a bubble tea shop and explained what she was considering. She wanted her father gone. She specified that it should occur away from the house, making it appear random and unconnected to the family. She claims to have paid Duncan $1,500. Duncan later testified that she gave him $200 and that he returned the money. He said she asked him to arrange something and that he refused. Regardless of which version is accurate, the arrangement fell apart. Duncan stopped responding to her messages. The plan was abandoned, but the intention remained. Jennifer discussed the situation with Daniel Wong. According to prosecutors, they calculated that hiring professionals would cost approximately $10,000 and that Jennifer would inherit roughly $500,000 once both parents were gone and the estate was settled. They planned to use the money to move in together. Daniel connected Jennifer with Linford Roy Crawford, someone he knew through informal networks. Crawford brought in Eric Sean Carty, who went by the nickname Sniper. Carty contacted David Milvaganam. The chain of communication was deliberately fragmented to reduce exposure. Jennifer was given a SIM card and an iPhone that had previously belonged to Daniel, allowing her to coordinate with Crawford without using her primary phone. The device was used exclusively for planning, nothing else. The original date was set for November 3rd, 2010. On the afternoon of November 2nd, Jennifer's parents informed her that they had made dinner plans for the following evening and would not be home. She sent a message postponing the operation. The new date was November 8th. That morning, Linford Crawford sent Jennifer a message confirming that everything would proceed after he finished work. The message read, "Game time." The evening of November 8th unfolded according to routine until it did not. Huai Hanpan arrived home from work later than usual. He had driven halfway back to the factory after realizing he had forgotten to lock a toolbox, and the additional trip delayed his return. He reached the house around 4:30 in the afternoon and called his brother to see if he wanted to go shopping. They drove to Home Depot together. Bijha Pan prepared dinner for herself and Jennifer, eating before leaving for her line dancing class, which she attended every Monday evening. She set aside a plate for Huai Han, covering it so it would stay warm. He returned around 6:15 ate alone, and then went upstairs to the study adjacent to the master bedroom. He spent time reading Vietnamese news websites, a habit he maintained every evening. He was in bed by 9:30. He always went to bed early because his shift at the factory began at 5 in the morning. Jennifer came downstairs around 10 o'clock to say good night to her mother, who had just returned from her dance class. Bitch Ha was still wearing her exercise clothes. They spoke briefly. Jennifer went back upstairs to her room, unlocked the front door, and turned on a light in the upstairs study. The light was a signal. Shortly afterward, she placed a brief call. Within minutes, 3 men entered the house through the unlocked front door. Jennifer remained in her room. She heard voices. She heard her father calling out. Huai Han had been asleep, but woke to find someone standing over him. He could not see clearly without his glasses. He was brought downstairs to the main floor, where Bitch Ha was near the television, visibly frightened. The lights in the house were off. The only illumination came from the television screen. The first words Bitch Ha said to her husband were asking how the intruders had gotten in. Huai Han replied that he did not know. He had been asleep. They were taken to the basement. Jennifer called her friend Edward at approximately 10:22. She told him that something was happening in the house and asked him to call the police. Edward told her to call them herself and hung up. Jennifer remained in her room. She could hear voices downstairs. She could hear her father calling out. Then she heard sounds she later described as pops. What happened in the basement happened quickly. Bitch Ha did not survive. Huai Han was critically injured, but somehow remained alive. He lost consciousness. The 3 men came back upstairs. They took $2,000 in cash from Jennifer, as had been arranged. Then they left through the front door. Jennifer retrieved her phone and dialed 911. The call was placed at 10:26. She told the operator that intruders had entered the house, that she had heard sounds she thought might be gunfire. Her voice was high-pitched and frantic. She repeated her address multiple times, stumbling over the words. At the 34-second mark of the call, a sound could be heard in the background. It was Huai Han. He had regained consciousness and found his wife beside him, not moving. He made his way up the stairs. Jennifer called down to him that she was on the phone with emergency services. Huai Han reached the front door and went outside, calling for help. The neighbor in the next driveway, who was about to leave for an early shift, heard him and also called 911. Police arrived within minutes. Huai Han was transported to a nearby hospital and then airlifted to Sunnybrook, a trauma center with specialized facilities for critical injuries. Jennifer was found upstairs, loosely restrained. Officers noted this but did not comment on it immediately. She was brought to the York Regional Police Station and interviewed just before 3 in the morning. She described 3 men, provided approximate details, said one of them had an accent she thought was Caribbean. She said they had demanded money, restrained her, taken her parents to the basement. She said she did not know why anyone would want to hurt her family. Bitch Ha Pan's funeral was held on November 19th. Huai Han could not attend due to his injuries. Jennifer had been asked to organize the arrangements. She handled everything. She stood at the service and accepted condolences. Observers noted that her expressions seemed rehearsed. This was not evidence of guilt, but it was noted. Huai Han Pan woke from his medically induced coma on November 11th, 3 days after the incident. He could not see. The injuries to his face had destroyed his left eye and caused permanent damage to his right. He would never regain functional vision. When detectives arrived to interview him, he described what he remembered. He had been brought downstairs and seen his wife near the television. They had been taken to the basement. He remembered hearing sounds. He remembered waking beside Bitch Ha's body, realizing she was not moving, and making his way toward the stairs. Then he paused and told the detectives something they had not expected to hear. He said he had seen Jennifer walking freely in the house while the intruders were present. He said she had been speaking to one of the men in a manner he described as familiar, as though they knew each other. He said she had not appeared to be restrained at all. When the detective asked if he was certain, Huai Han replied that he was. He told them to investigate what Jennifer had done. The investigation shifted immediately. Officers reviewed security camera footage from a neighbor's property and confirmed that 3 men had approached the house but had not forced entry. The door had been opened from the inside. They examined Jennifer's phone records and discovered she had been using two devices. The first was her primary phone, which she had disclosed to police. The second was an iPhone registered to Daniel Wong. Message logs showed more than 100 exchanges between Jennifer and Daniel in the 6 hours leading up to the incident. Many of the messages were brief and logistical. Others were longer, discussing timing and confirming that plans remained active. On November 22nd, Jennifer was brought in for a third interview. This time, the detective assigned to question her was William Getz. Getz did not approach the conversation as a neutral inquiry. He began by building rapport. He asked about Jennifer's childhood. He asked about figure skating and piano lessons. He asked about her parents' expectations and whether she had ever felt that their demands were unreasonable. Jennifer described the pressure she had experienced. She described the hours spent training and studying. She described the sense of failure that accompanied every setback. Getz listened carefully and expressed sympathy. After more than 2 hours, the tone of the conversation changed. Getz told Jennifer that he knew she was involved. He said there was no question about it. He said the only question was whether she would take responsibility for what had happened. Jennifer asked what would happen to her. Getz told her that depended on what she said next. Jennifer began to cry. She said the men were supposed to target her, not her parents. She said she had been struggling with depression and could not bring herself to end her own life, so she had hired someone to do it for her. She said the plan changed without her knowledge. She said she never wanted her mother to be harmed. Getz did not believe her. He pointed out that she had been left alive and unharmed while both of her parents had been targeted. Jennifer did not have an answer that resolved the inconsistency. She was arrested immediately. The trial began in March of 2014 and lasted 10 months. Jennifer Pan, Daniel Wong, Linford Crawford, and David Mulvaganam were charged with first-degree murder, attempted murder, and conspiracy to commit murder. Eric Hardy's case was handled separately. He pleaded guilty and received an 18-year sentence. He died in prison in 2018. The Crown's case relied on phone records showing coordinated communication between all defendants on November 8th. Hugh I. Hanpan's testimony describing his daughter's behavior during the incident, and recorded interview footage in which Jennifer acknowledged her involvement. The defense argued that she had been under extreme emotional distress and that her statements were influenced by the interrogation process. The jury rejected that explanation. On December 13, 2014, all 4 defendants were convicted of first-degree murder and attempted murder and sentenced to life imprisonment with no possibility of parole for 25 years. In May of 2023, the Ontario Court of Appeal overturned the first-degree murder convictions, ruling that the jury should have been allowed to consider lesser charges. The Supreme Court of Canada dismissed the Crown's appeal in April of 2025. Jennifer Pan and her co-defendants will face a new trial, while the attempted murder conviction remains in place. Jennifer is currently 38 years old and incarcerated at Grand Valley Institution for Women in Kitchener, Ontario. She continues to maintain her innocence. Hugh I. Hanpan has not spoken publicly since the trial concluded. He is permanently blind and unable to work. He suffers from chronic insomnia and recurring nightmares. He no longer lives in the house on Helen Avenue and has never returned. His son Felix later obtained a court order prohibiting Jennifer from contacting any surviving family members. The order remains in effect for life. Bijha Pan is buried in a cemetery in Markham. Hugh I. Hanpan has never visited her grave. He cannot see it. His wife is gone. His daughter is imprisoned. His life continues, but only in a limited, irreversible sense. What was taken from him on that November evening cannot be restored. The case may continue through the courts, but no outcome will undo what was lost. This was not a crime driven by chaos or impulse. It was shaped slowly by pressure, secrecy, and fear of failure. When expectations become absolute and honesty becomes impossible, the damage does not always stay invisible. If you follow stories like this, not for shock, but to understand how ordinary lives collapse, you can subscribe for more. New cases are explored here, one at a time, without shortcuts.